My name is Tiffany and this is my husband Brad. We run a real estate business together, investing, flipping, wholesaling. I'm a real estate agent with Real Broker, and together Brad and I have flipped over 500 homes. In today's video, we're going to share with you our 2024 predictions of the real estate market.
2024?
Yeah.
Holy cow. So look, if you're a real estate agent or investor, you are probably asking yourself, what does the next 12 months look like? And you're wondering, should I be preparing for a real estate crash? And if you're not an agent or an investor, you're probably wondering, is now the time to buy if you've been renting for a while? And if you're a seller, you might be asking yourself, did I miss the boat? Did the best real estate market that's been here in the last 20 years, have I lost out? Is it maybe even still smart to try to trade your house in and buy again in 2024? We're gonna be answering these questions and more. And if you stick around to the end, don't leave. We're gonna be also talking about how we expect to capitalize and what you can do to thrive in the coming real estate market, because it's not all doom and gloom.
So the first thing that I think we need to explain is the 4 phases of the real estate market.
Yes.
Just the natural phases that happen every 7 to 10 years. Throughout history, it's always happened. And so I think it's a good idea for us to talk to you guys so that you understand what that looks like.
Think of the phases of a real estate market just like you would the seasons of a calendar. So let's start with winter. The winter is what we call recovery in a real estate market. And that's where we've hit like the low point after the 2008 Great Recession. The winter took a long time. It bottomed out and it stayed there for about 4 to 5 years. That's what made it the Great Recession. After winter comes, spring starts. And that's what we call expansion. Think of everything starting to open up and you start to see signs of life again.
Just like in spring.
Just like in spring. Summer comes, and what happens in summer, everything just starts to go crazy. If you're a gardener, things start to explode. And in real estate, things start to explode as well. Things get crazy, and we call that HyperSupply. We just got out of that season, 2020, 2021, even 2022, definitely look like HyperSupply. And then we move into what's called fall or a recession period. And that recession is when everything starts to contract again and goes towards that bottom again. It's not the bottoming out, but it's that movement towards that.
Okay, so keeping that in mind, we've got a list of questions here that we want to answer for you guys. And Brad's going to answer these questions from the perspective of a real estate investor. He works with a lot of real estate investors. That's his arena. And I'm going to answer these questions more from the perspective of real estate agents and traditional buyers and sellers. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so now that you've talked about what the phases are of the real estate cycle, what phase do you believe that we're in and why?
I believe a recession period. A lot of economists are saying that we're already through the real estate recession, that it's over. I don't believe we are, and here's why. Number one, the winter period. So again, we're talking about 4 seasons, and they typically match each other in length and duration. The last winter that we were in was 2008 to 2012, 2013. That's when we were in that like expanded stillness.
Yeah, it didn't start coming back up until 2015, actually, is when it really started.
Okay, so it was anywhere from 5 to 7 years of winter, which was then followed by a long spring of expansion. And so that was, again, another 4 to 5 years, which really it hit its peak in around 2019. Now, the interesting thing is, it seemed like we were heading towards another recession in 2019. That's what a lot of people, but we had missed the summer, and that's what a lot of people missed. And so we went from spring into this hyper supply of summer from 2020 until 2022. And so that was about a 3-year period of hyper supply, but after about a 5-year period of spring. And now it's obvious to me, 2022, when the rates started increasing in May of 2022 began the recession. So I believe we are 18 months into about a 3, could be as long as 5-year recessionary period, which means we've still got winter to go to.
We're just at the start of a recession, in my opinion. There's some indicators that we haven't quite seen yet, or we're just starting to see the beginnings of. like job loss and stuff like that. And if you talk to most real estate agents, they'll tell you we're not in a recession because there's such a need for supply and demand is still good, but there's just not enough inventory. But yes, I agree with Brad. I believe we are at the beginning stages of a recession, and we'll go more into that and what that looks like. So what are the biggest indicators for you, Brad, in the real estate world that indicate that we are heading towards a recession?
Well, let's talk about the biggest one, which is affordability. Well, first of all, housing has just become completely unaffordable for the majority of working class Americans. And that's always been since World War II, that has been a huge rally cry of the real estate world, is that every American can own a home. And now, not only is it not that every American, but very few working class Americans can afford a house.
You also went through the 2008 crash.
I did.
So what are some indicators and red flags that you've seen that are similar to this market?
Well, I just saw it today. I am constantly looking at the new product that's coming onto the market, so I'm always looking at new builds. Today, we are in Utah, which has been one of the most inflated markets in the country. Today, in a brand new builder released around 50 townhomes in a B-class neighborhood at $500,000 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath townhome end unit, 4-story, calling it a luxury townhouse in a B neighborhood, in a B city. This is not an A-class neighborhood, and I'm not going to name it, but if you're in Utah, it's not the best in the valley, and it is listed at $500,000. I did the calculation. A 3% down payment has this is a traditional first-time home buyer product, paying $4,200 a month. $4,200 a month. Now, if you're maxing out your affordability at 41% of your income, that means you're making over $10,000 a month as a first-time home buyer. I don't see a lot of first-time home buyers out there making $125,000 a year.
I think the average income, I just looked it up not too long ago, it's like 76 or 78,000 a year.
Yeah, so that to me shows, okay, we've lost touch with what an affordable house is. The house that we're buying right now, that we're looking to flip, is in what's supposed to be an affordable neighborhood. And we're saying that it's worth $600,000.
Yeah.
A first-time home buyer or and the renters who live there can't afford to buy it, and they're 2 professionals that live in this house. So 2 professionals, working professionals, can't afford to buy the house that they're renting right now, and so they're going to continue to rent. That's unsustainable.
Yeah. There was some reports that recently came out that credit card debt hit a new high, $1 trillion of credit card debt here in America. Just some other indicators that affordability is a problem here in the U.S. Car repos hit an all new high. I think I saw that the average car payment was $800 in America.
Well, we also saw that over 40% of American households now have one car payment of $1,000 or more a month.
Yeah. Some other things that I want to bring up is student loan debt. We had the memorandum where the forbearance for student loans, that has now ended, and the average student loan in America is $503.
A month.
A month. And then there was another article that CNBC came out with that said most Americans can't afford a $500 emergency expense. So if most Americans can't afford a $500 emergency expense, how are they going to afford a $500 student loan payment?
Right, and that came out at the end of August in 2023. So we're talking just within the last couple months. So we're dealing with an affordability issue where most Americans are just feeling the squeeze. And the number one culprit of that squeeze is housing.
I think the indicators that determine whether or not we are in a recession, typically, there are 3 factors that come into play. It is the affordability. Can Americans afford the house? It's the interest rate. How interest rates definitely affect people's ability to purchase real estate, and then it's inventory. What's your opinion about interest rates? What do you think is going to happen there?
Well, my opinion is based off of everything that Jerome Powell and the Fed has. Whether you agree with them or not, they have been very steady. What they say is what they do.
Very transparent.
Very transparent. They've been telling us now for 18 months they were going to raise interest rates, and every time they told us they were going to, they did. And now they're telling us they see no reason to lower interest rates anytime soon. You can go online and check their meeting schedule. Their next meeting schedule as of today is in December, I believe the 11th and 12th. And right now they're telling us that given the indications, we are probably due for another interest rate increase, but maybe not. They weren't really sure, but there has been no reason to show that interest rates should come down. Now, their number one concern, the Fed's number one concern with interest rates, is housing now. They are worried about housing prices being the number one reason why inflation is where it's at. So why would they reduce interest rates? We're hearing people say over and over again, oh, when interest rates come down, then housing prices are going to explode and you're going to wish you own them. The only reason for housing prices to come down is what? A real recession. Now, the way the Fed marks a recession is after it's already happened. The numbers have already happened, and we as Americans, we've already felt it. And so the only reason for them to bring interest rates down is we are already feeling it, meaning job loss, credit continuing to be maxed out. Those things have already happened when rates come down.
They need house prices to come down. That's the whole point of raising the interest rates, and I think they've been pretty transparent about that. The thing that's been the big kicker is inventory, and this has been a funny thing because having interest rates as low as they've been for the past, 10 years at least, what we have is a lot of people, what I'm hearing it be called is the golden handcuffs. So people are stuck in these interest rates of 2.75, 3.25, and they're not wanting to move and lose that interest rate. They're going to hang on to that. So that's creating this like bog in house selling right now. Nobody wants to sell. Nobody wants to lose that amazing interest rate and trade it in for, a 7.5 interest rate, almost doubling their payment. So that's creating this lock of inventory. But I believe what we're going to be seeing here shortly is we're going to start seeing the people who have no choice but to sell. And a lot of people are referring to that as ghost inventory or shadow inventory, and we're going to go into what that means. One of the biggest red flags that I've seen with this shadow inventory is the Airbnb bust. And I don't know how much you've heard about the Airbnb bust, but there are two issues that I've looked into as far as Airbnbs are concerned. The first one is a lot of people rushed into this Airbnb space and they got these loans that are underwritten based off of the revenue that they planned on collecting from the Airbnbs.
Or that they collected over a short period of time.
Right, with the Airbnb. Yeah. So there's no credit check,
or
no
very
income
little
verification. Yeah, very little. And so basically what's happening now, what we're seeing now is Airbnbs, we're not seeing the revenue that we were seeing 2 years ago on these Airbnbs. People are crunched for money. They're not going out and vacationing the way that they used to.
Well, not only that, the big corporations that operate hotels and resorts have started to combat. They've started to develop things to combat the Airbnb experience.
Right.
So you're seeing a lack of demand for Airbnbs, and the supply has increased because lots of people bought them, and the resorts and hotels are adding inventory. They're adding, you see hotels adding suites type of deals where they've got the kitchen and they've got the more at home type experiences to compete with the Airbnbs, which was only a matter of time.
Yeah. And we're also seeing regulations, cities regulating these Airbnbs at a much higher level.
That too.
Than they ever have. So between a mix of all of these things that are happening, what we're starting to see is these Airbnb owners, a lot of them are smaller mom pop owners that, bought a few of them. They don't really have the money to subsidize the payments on these Airbnbs. If they're not generating the revenue to cover the payment, they're going to be forced to list those Airbnbs and put them on the market. So I think that's something that we'll start seeing more and more of in 2024.
Today, another key issue, people are talking about inventory as if it can't change. I remember this from back in 2007. Look, here's all it takes for inventory to change. A slight uptick. Right now we're at about, across the country, we're at 3.5 months inventory. And right here in the Intermountain West in Utah, we're at about the same, at about 3.5 months inventory. And people act like that can't go to 5 to 6 months quickly. All it takes is a slight decrease in demand, which interest rates going up and job losses start happening, or a slight increase in foreclosures, forbearances running out. Over the last 3 years, we've had virtually no foreclosures. There's been virtually no foreclosures. We made our living buying houses at foreclosures. We had to completely change because we couldn't go to foreclosure sales to buy auction because there weren't any. All the government action that took place as a result of COVID-19 shut down foreclosures and virtually shut it down for the last 2 years. It's only been in the last 12 months that we've started to see any foreclosure action, and not near at the level that will happen as people are forced now to make their payments. So 3.5 months inventory can creep to 5 to 6 months inventory in one season. The season we're in now, November of 2023, by February or March, we could easily be to 5 or 6 months inventory. And if we don't see a decrease in interest rates, which we see no sign that that's going to happen, as the selling season starts and people need to sell because of foreclosure, because of job change, because of divorce, because of death, those things that normally happen, and they've put it off till the spring, then we start to see it. It wouldn't take much for us to see a 12-month inventory be back. In 2020, in 2008 and 2009, I remember sitting in a sales meeting realizing that we had 18 months of inventory on the market here on the Wasatch Front. And across the country, it was the same thing. And we knew we were in trouble. Look, and that's where we're heading for, unless the government does something to change this again. But again, that's just kicking the can down the road, and I don't see that happening between job losses, foreclosures, and everything else that we've talked about.
Yeah, the other thing that we haven't talked about yet is builder supply. So a lot of builders, what they've been doing, especially on these higher end homes, is I think a lot of them are waiting for interest rates to come down. So they're not issuing the C of O, the certificate of occupancy on these properties yet, because once they do that, they're taxed on real estate rather than just the land. So they're holding off on getting that certificate of occupancy until the market looks like a better time to list these. And so we're going to have a lot of that coming online as well.
Yeah, and I would say this, like, to the counter to that as well, I will say the one thing I have noticed builders doing better than 2008, they have been holding back their own expansion. So we see builders right now, like as we're shopping product, as we're shopping projects, we see builders slowing down. They're doing that themselves. They're making that decision. But what we're being told is that we have a generation's worth of supply built up, or not built up, but a generation shortage. And I just don't know how true that is anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about all of the houses that are not owner occupied, all of the inventory out there that's not owner occupied because of this expansion that we've had, there are a lot of corporations and people that have bought more than one property. And as we start to see this contraction, that's where we'll see this inventory coming back online, in my opinion, including builders and, Airbnbs and investors and all of it. What can investors do to prepare?
Well, when we talk about investors, there's a couple different classes. There's transactional investors, which we are. So we buy and sell properties. We do wholesale deals. And then there's the buy and hold investors. The buy and hold investors, I'll address you first of all. If you're not already in a fixed rate mortgage, I'm sorry, because you're going to be stuck with your interest rate. And as your interest rates adjust, you're going to have to refinance at today's interest rate. The difference is going to be staggering for you. do everything you can to shore up your properties, because your best hope of generating the most amount of rental income is to keep it in good shape. This is the time when we see a lot of people deferring maintenance, putting maintenance off, not replacing the roof. Do whatever you have to do to shore up your property so you get the maximum value for it. The other thing you can do, if you're a transactional investor like us, cut your expenses. Like, get serious about what your expenses are. And if you haven't done that already, like, do that now. Take a good audit and be doing that monthly, looking at what your expenses are, and then get back to the basics. Find the off-market properties, find the motivated sellers, and talk to them. Stop wasting your time on people that are not motivated, people that are thinking about buying, people that are thinking about selling. You need to only be talking to people that absolutely positively have to sell right now.
And I think the advice is very similar for agents. Cut your expenses, get your finances in order, pay off your debt, get really serious about paying off your debt and skinnying up your expenses as much as possible. I think the last 10 years or so, it's kind of been easy in this industry. It's been easy to come across deals. I think it's important for agents to understand that the deals are not going to fall in your lap anymore. You're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to go to work. The other advice that I would give you is focus on listings. Focus on motivated listings, people who are very motivated to sell. The thing that's been really cool about Brad and I's business is, we've always focused on people that have to sell, people who are being foreclosed on, people who are in distressed situations. So maybe they didn't have to sell for cash, but they had to sell one way or another. And the reason I think it's so important that you focus on listings, and because in any market, it's the item, it's the commodity that if you can bring that to the market and you have the thing that's selling, you control the market. So it's important to make sure that you're controlling the market, that you're holding the commodity, that you're going out and bringing that thing to the market. The thing to remember that is, even in recessions, there will be transactions. It's just going to be determined on, who's going to go out there and get the listings to bring to the market, and obviously making sure that they're priced right. The other thing that happens in recessions is if a property isn't priced right, it's going to take a lot longer to sell. Things are going to take, as more inventory starts coming on the market, things are going to take longer to sell anyway. If you price the property wrong, you're going to be chasing a down market, which is going to make it that much worse. And that would be my advice to sellers as well. Start getting really realistic about what your property is worth, and don't waste time overpricing, because you're going to lose a lot more money that way. Okay. Price it right out the gate.
Yeah, you will be chasing a down market. And one thing, Tiff, that I think is so critical, whether you're an investor or a real estate agent, is spending focused time every day focusing on your mindset, focusing on the stories that you're telling yourself. Realizing that whatever happens around you, the experience that you have is as much determined by your theme of consciousness, your view of what's happening, than anything else. So how is it that more millionaires are made during downtimes? Like, how does that happen?
It's their mindset, and they're able to see the opportunities.
Absolutely.
Creating their reality.
So either you determine that you're going to succeed and grow through the downtime, or you're going to suffer through it. And really, you get to decide that.
Next question is, should you be buying?
If you're a transactional investor like us, we absolutely buy. We can forecast because of the way markets move. Remember, real estate markets typically move very slow. They move like an iceberg moves through the ocean. They get there eventually, but they're very slow. They don't move like a race boat. So we're able to project what prices will be in the next 4 to 6 months. For example, I spoke with another investor who's also a transactional investor, who said he's anticipating a 10% price decrease over the next 12 months. So any project that's going to take longer than 3 to 4 months, so if there's a major rehab that he's doing, a major value add, he's reducing his after repair value, or ARV, by 10%. So just know what your numbers are. And the thing about that's cool about him, and any investor that knows their numbers, they just stick with it. They just know what it is. And so know what your numbers are, excuse me, know what your expectations are, and stick with that. Now, if you're buying and holding, this is the one area where we have gone back and forth. Make sure you're in a positive cash flow every month. As the market continues to to change and to recess, if you are having to pay money out of your pocket, even during great times, it can be really hard to make money. So make sure that you are guarding that money that you're making every month and not putting it into properties that aren't cash flowing.
And I think anticipate potential downturn in rents, decrease in rents. With any recession, rents typically do see some sort of decline, and a lot of people are talking about,
Even
this
if it's just a freeze.
So yeah, just anticipate that. Make sure that you're going to be okay. If you're going to purchase a rental, I would most definitely anticipate some sort of decrease in rents. If you are a traditional buyer questioning whether or not now is the time to buy, I say use data, not drama. Because it's easy for buyers to get into, buying just because they have to buy and they really want to buy, and they deal with a little bit of FOMO. And while, I don't necessarily think normally there's anything wrong with buying through your emotions, I think this is not a time to use your emotions to buy. This is definitely a time you should use data to make your buying decision. Typically, my rule of thumb is if you're buying for the long haul, meaning you're going to stay in this property for 5+ years and you don't see any road bumps coming up, any reason that's going to make you sell. Unfortunately, we can't always predict job loss and certain things like that, but people typically don't lose in the real estate market as long as they wait it out long enough. And so I would definitely anticipate if we were to see values decrease and you were to go underwater on your property, by the way, which means you cannot refinance and change your rate on a property if you are underwater and lose value. Right. That means you're stuck with that payment. So if you're comfortable, with whatever payment that you're going to make, and you feel confident that you can make that payment for the next 5 years, then sure, go ahead and buy. And there's always exceptions to the rules. There's always deals to be found in any real estate market, but typically speaking, that's my rule of thumb and advice for buying.
So if you can hang on, stay in the property for 5 years or more, go ahead and buy.
Yeah, and you're comfortable with your payment. What about selling? Did you miss the boat with selling?
Well, right now, no.
Right.
If you're putting your house on the market, prices have held steady year over year, September to September. We don't have all the data across the country, but we do here locally. September to September, October to October, prices have held steady. So if you want to sell, you're probably going to be selling right now at about the same.
Even with seasonality right now,
as long as you price your property to sell,
right,
you can get it gone. Our strategy is always price it a little below the market, about 3 to 5% below the market. Drive interest, drive showings, and we always end up selling stuff pretty fast, typically.
Yep. That's my area of expertise whenever we've flipped a property, and I also work with lots of other sellers. We touched on that a little bit earlier, but making sure that you're pricing that property right out the gate. That's where you're going to drive the most leverage and the most interest. That's going to help you get to that price point where you need to be. So pricing the property right out the gate, having realistic expectations about what your property is worth. I always recommend finding a good agent that can help you with that. All right, and our last question is, why is flipping houses so smart for real estate agents and investors during a recession?
Well, this is kind of a question.
Loaded.
A leading question, right? Loaded question. Well, we think flipping houses is so critical for investors and, transactional investors and for real estate agents, because you get an opportunity to control the market, to control the inventory in the market. So, for example, if you're flipping just one house a month, that guarantees that you're going to have one house every month to list, which means you're going to have to know what the prices are, what's happening in the market. It's also going to give you a reason to speak to your clients, to speak to your sphere of influence. It's a great idea, because even if other sellers aren't budging, you have to sell your house. It's a flip. So I think it's a great idea for real estate agents to always be flipping, even if they're not flipping one a month. If they're flipping, one at a time, I think it's just such a great idea. Plus, you come across as an expert when you know how to flip houses. Our clients that work with us, they know that compared to the other 98% of real estate agents that don't ever flip, we have a lot more experience and a lot more knowledge. We can handle everything from basic repairs. Our idea of what gets houses sold is typically better than a real estate agent who just never does it themselves. So I think it's a great idea for real estate agents, if you've never flipped, to start now and to learn from experts who've been doing it already.
The one thing that's been so great for us as a couple who flips houses is you're not just making the commission when you sell the property and getting all of those buyer leads that come in from just having a listing, but you're also making money on and revenue from actually flipping the house as well. So you're controlling the inventory, you're representing yourself a lot more efficient in what you're doing because you're making more money in less time. And so I love our business of flipping houses. We started doing this just after the last recession, and it helped us thrive through the last recession. We were doing great while seeing other people who weren't doing so good in the recession and dealing, like, having a hard time getting listings. And we had a pretty steady flow of income, not just from flipping, but also listing the flips as well.
Yeah, it just gives you, it gives you a lot, flipping houses gives you a lot of opportunity. You can position yourself as an expert in your community. Any real estate agent can have a list of contractors that you've referred out, but do you really know how well they do? Have you seen how they work on your projects? We strongly suggest, if you've never flipped a house, that you start. And if you want to know how to do that, make sure to follow us, because we do have opportunities and ways to show you how to get started. Even if you have no money, no credit, your knowledge as a real estate agent is important knowledge that it takes to flip a house.
The other thing that's really fulfilling in flipping houses is typically in recessions, there's a lot of, properties that are distressed. People are in distress. People are going through really hard times. And so you get to show up to help those people that may be losing their home. You get to be that bright light to help them through that situation. And then you get to take these distressed properties in your community, bring value to them, add value to them, make them beautiful again, and then bring them to the next family to kind of have a restart. And I think that's like one of the most beautiful things about what we do. We would love to hear from you in the comments. Do you agree with us? Do you not agree with us? What are your predictions for the real estate market in 2024?
Make sure to follow us, as we will be giving you more insights into what's happening in the real estate industry, not just here in Utah, but across the country. And not only that, but what you can do to survive and add more options to your business, specifically through transactional investing, flipping houses, wholesaling, and the keys to that.